Alright, welcome back to part 3. Wrapping up here erosion by wind and continuing on into erosion by gravity or the wasting part of this lesson. So just going to clarify here some of these sand dunes, kinds of sand dunes. So crescentic, it forms kind of like a crescent shape, and you have kind of a gentle sloping, and then it drops off fairly suddenly. But then on the sudden drop off side, it kind of has I can't really show you, but it has like a kind of crescent shape where it kind of like the moon when it only has part of it showing. That would be a crescent. And in crescentic, the points that it form away from the wind. In parabolic, those points form towards the wind, and that's because at each of the points, the points are held in place by plants or something else, and the middle of the dune keeps being blown by the wind, and so that is it's just the inverse of the crescentic, and so you have the difference there between the crescentic and the parabolic. And then the transverse is when you have the wind, or the dunes are forming this way, the wind is blowing this way, and so they form perpendicular to the direction of the wind blowing. But it looks kind of like ocean waves maybe, or something like that. And then star dunes is a specific kind of transverse dune, I think, in which you have wind blowing from this direction, wind blowing from this direction, wind blowing from this direction, wind blowing from this direction. So, or multiple directions at least, and it kind of ends up having a high point in the middle, kind of like a pyramid. But then you kind of have several arms going out from that middle there. That's a star dune. Okay, then one more term here with wind erosion, and this isn't necessarily having to do with the wind putting sand back down, except it does have to do with the wind carrying sediments. That's simply abrasion is the eroding action of wind-blown sand. So you might have seen pictures of like arches and stuff in nature that were consisted of soft rock that the wind blew sediments against and eventually wore it away, so that you ended up with what you have there with those arches and different kinds of things. Okay, so moving on to gravity. First of all, why do we call it erosion by gravity? Well, it's because Earth that is high up slowly moves, or actually can also move fast, but Earth that is higher up moves to a lower position, so the gravity is pulling it down and causing them. So that's why we call it erosion by gravity. And mass wasting here, if you think erosion by mass wasting, you could think of it kind of like that. That should substitute as well. Is the process in which gravity causes the downslope movements of rock, soil, volcanic ash, snow, or ice. So when any of these things are forced to move down the hill, that is mass wasting, or is erosion by gravity. So one of the slowest ways in which mass wasting happens is called soil creep. It's the most widespread form as well, and it's just a very slow kind of downslope movement of soil and rock fragments. So if the soil just very slowly over a period of time moves down the hill, that is soil creep, and you'll see evidences of this, like as if there's if you had a telephone pole, like it'll slowly tilt kind of, and eventually if you let it go, it probably fold over entirely. Now the fastest one, the most rapid, is called a mud flow. It's rapid movements of loose, water-saturated soil, the most fluid and fastest type of mass wasting. So you may remember back when we were talking about soil, we watched a little video in which someone was running away from a mud flow, That's because the water is saturated with or the soil is saturated with water, and and because it's heavier and it's just not as rigid, it just gushes down the hill, and you end up with a mud flow. An avalanche then is very much the same thing, except with snow and ice instead of with water saturated soil. So massive ice and snow abruptly dislodge from a mountain face. So I think you guys know what an avalanche is, and it's probably one of the things you've been heard about more is an avalanche. And then landslides, sudden slides of huge masses of rock or soil down a slope. Again, I think you guys are familiar with this. You may have heard the term, like if you're referring to something like an election or something, this person and someone won, very, very clearly, majorly over another person. Maybe you might call that a landslide victory. It's sudden, it's large, it's decisive, it's very much clearly able to see what has happened. There's different kinds here. Debris slide, and these are all based off of what material makes up the landslide. So in a debris slide, you have rock fragments, other loose materials found in coarse soil. And in earth slide, you have fine soil and small pebbles. And in a rock slide, you primarily have bedrock. So just three different kinds of landslides there. Be good to remember maybe. I don't know if it'll be on the test, but it might be good to know the difference there, that there are several different ones. And then a rockfall is when we have individual rock fragments that abruptly break off the sides of a steep cliff after exposure to gradual weathering, such as exfoliation. I'm guessing you have seen at least places where there's potential for rock falls. I think there's a few. Okay, so driving down the road, you might see a yellow warning sign that says something about watch out for rocks, or I forget entirely what it all says, or for watch out for falling rocks, something like that. That would be places that are prone to rock falls, or places that are capable of rock falls, I should say. Not necessarily doesn't mean that it'll happen, but they're capable of having those. And anyway, so rock fall there. I think there might be one down along. What's the? Not 30. I forget the name. 36. Yeah, down along Coshocton, those areas. I think there's a rock fall down along there. All right, so that wraps up talking about erosion by gravity. Let's talk a little bit about preventing erosion. What are some ways we can prevent erosion? First of all, terracing. It's modifying a smooth slope into a series of level stair-like steps. This is, I think we've referred to this, or that this is talked about a little bit in the Bible. Like you might hear about the wall not being built up. It's because they used to terrace the hillsides, and they'd have these walls, and if one person didn't keep their wall built up, then it would crumble, and the next person's would follow soon thereafter. So terracing is simply a way to make so that the hillside doesn't erode very easily. And then strip cropping is when you plant alternating strips of erosion-prone and erosion-preventing crops. And you see this happening all around the area here in Holmes County and the surrounding counties. You see that the strip cropping happening a lot. And finally, breakwaters is a way we can prevent erosion in rivers and on seashores and stuff like that. It's an object designed to reduce the force of waves in order to prevent waves from moving away soil. Or you could call it windbreaks as well. But it's like it's just a line kind of rocky of rocks or something that prevent the waves from just washing over. And then really quickly, windbreaks formed from fences, trees, tall plants, etc. You see